Okay, so are we ready now to have another Q&A? This time we'll include our stabilizer people as well as our knockdown drug people and our physicians. And so are we all ready? Are we all ready? Okay, this first question actually is for Carino, okay, and it's from Celia. We only use first names here. We don't want to get anybody, in trouble, or they feel that they might get in trouble. I have Val 50. Well, we know it's Val 30, but with that 20 thing, it can be Val 30 or Val 50 these days. And I have been having symptoms that appear to be involving my eyes and my brain. Is there a way I can take the Corino drug along with my Onpattro?
Celia, I think, again, kinetic stabilizers with gene silencers, at least to date, seem to be okay. The issue, we have not yet studied tocopone in particular with the silencers. So we don't know whether that's possible yet or not. Again, I think we will likely do those studies in the future. I think it's important for us to first demonstrate that we have the capability and that we do affect, ocular or CNS manifestations of the disease. So we're in the process of doing that. We'll have trials that'll start next year, phase 2 trials that will have an open label extension study as well. Particularly patients like you that may have, systemic polyneuropathies, and then also have maybe an ocular or CNS symptoms. So we're going to be starting those next year. So we're in the process of hopefully determining that, but I can't say for sure yet whether the combination would be suitable.
Thank you. Okay, this is for Pfizer. Why would you? Oh, this is kind of okay. All right. It's from Barbara, and she says, "Why would you expect me to take a 20 milligram drug when you have a 61 milligram version of it available? Naturally, I want the higher milligram dosage. When are you going to cut out the 20 milligram and only have a 61 milligram so you don't confuse us?" Adam, take it away.
Sure. No, it's a good question. So as you may know, Vyndaqel was first approved in the EU for the treatment of ATTR-PN at a dose of 20 milligrams. However, based on a different trial, the ATTRACT trial here in the US, well, it's a global trial, but the ATTRACT study in a different patient population with cardiomyopathy, the FDA approved and recommended dose is Vyndaqel 80 milligrams or Vyndamax 61 milligrams. The 61 milligrams, as I mentioned, was developed for patient convenience. If your doctor wants to switch onto the Vyndamax regimen, that is clearly up to your doctor, and we support any clinical decisions that they would make. Currently, we have no plans of, at the moment of removing Vyndaqel.
Let me ask you a question. Are they the same price? I mean, to the, if your doctor prescribes one or the other, does your insurance company have to pay more or less for either one?
In the US, Vyndaqel 80 milligrams and Vyndamax 61 milligrams are the same price, at list price.
Well, okay, I can see Barbara's point here then. Okay. This is from William for Pfizer. I was diagnosed with amyloidosis on October 2020. It is not the cancer type as indicated by the bone marrow biopsy. Based on family history, it's believed I have the wild type. Evidently, it hasn't been fully tested yet. Genetic tests have not yet been completed. I'm an 82-year-old male Caucasian who until late March 2020 was in excellent health. I was very active, including 2.5 workouts at a fitness center for the last 10 years. How do I know if the Vyndamax is working to reduce or halt the production of amyloids? Even though I am taking Vyndamax, will the amyloids continue to spread to other organs?
Yeah, it's actually a very good question. So what we know from the clinical trial is that Vyndamax does slow the progression of the disease. Currently, we don't have evidence that strong evidence that there is overt disease reversal. And as I mentioned earlier, you may not necessarily feel any different taking the medicine. But it is important to take the medicine, as prescribed orally once a day. I hope that answers. It's not. I know it's difficult to take a medicine that you don't necessarily feel different on. But what we do know from the trial and can support is that it reduces mortality and cardiovascular rehospitalization. And in terms of our functional endpoints, so quality of life and 6-minute walk test, for example, your ability to walk over 6 minutes, the medicine slowed the deterioration in those measures and as early as 6 months taking the medicine, and persisted throughout the end of the trial.
I get what William's saying, and we did get a lot of questions on this, and this is for all of our people, really, is that, with AL amyloidosis, we know that if you measure light chains and if they've gone down, you're getting better. But we don't have a measurement, and people keep asking, about measuring pre-albumin or measuring the transthyretin in the blood, or is there a hope, and I'll ask all of you for this, okay, is there a hope for an assay of some kind in the future that might measure it, and are you working on it, and if you are, can you share something about it? And Adam, since we have you on the screen, we'll ask you first. Yeah,
sure. So this is an area of active research investigation, and you're absolutely right. Light chain as a field is far ahead of TTR in the sense that there's a biomarker that can be measured, namely the light chains, for both diagnosis of disease, but also for monitoring response to therapy. In TTR, we don't have that magic biomarker yet. And you highlighted a few: pre-albumin, is it retinol, is it TTR levels? This is an area of active investigation. Pfizer is working on this. I know many of my colleagues on the call are also working on this actively, but we're just not there yet as a field. And it's that is where we hope to go soon. And I'll let my other colleagues comment on this as well.
Okay, Akshay?
Yeah, thanks, Muriel. With Onpattro, when we were studying it as patisiran in the phase 3 study, which we call Apollo, which led to the approval of the drug, we did see improvement in the neuropathy. And so that's obviously very important and helpful to patients. There are a number of quality of life measures, which encompass, very ordinary everyday activities like lifting a chair or turning a door handle, the kinds of things that become impaired, as neuropathy advances. And with that, and also the gastrointestinal aspects and other aspects, we saw improvement. So, Onpattro did demonstrate that in phase 3, and then we've shared that information by publishing it. More recently, in terms of a test, there's an interesting test called neurofilament that we did on the Apollo samples from the phase 3. And neurofilament is a complicated term, but it's a chemical that's released by nerves that are being damaged. And there are lots of neurological nervous diseases where it's now been shown that neurofilament levels go up as the disease progresses. And what we were able to show with Onpattro is that neurofilament levels went down when patients were being treated with Onpattro in the phase 3 study, but they went up on the placebo, on the dummy drug. And so that was very nice to see, because it's consistent with the neurological endpoint, the neuropathy endpoint, which also showed an improvement, but now with a blood test. And so one of the areas of interest in the field, I think, might be, as it progresses, is to see whether this neurofilament test can be used as a kind of barometer of how's the patient doing. Is the neuropathy getting worse, or is it getting better by means of these levels going up or down? So I think that's of interest, and let's see where the field goes with that. I'm sure the academics may want to comment on that as well.
Okay, Gustavo, you're next. Thank you so much, Akshay.
And very briefly, I think for the silencers, you have a number that you can look. It's the TTR going down, right? Because once you start the drug, you see knockouts up to 80%. And this confirms that the drug is acting on blocking the protein. And in general, 80 to 90% is what these drugs aim at. However, this number is not something that we follow on the treatment. We don't have necessarily any relationship of the 80% or 90% knockdown with a better outcome or less better optimal outcome. So this relationship cannot be made. So we don't necessarily use the level of TTR as a parameter for understanding that the treatment is working. We know that the drug is working, and we hope with the upcoming trials to show that this reduction translates in a clinical benefit as is seen already in polyneuropathy.
Okay, anyone else want to make a comment here about a future assay that might be helpful? No? Okay, I know that Prothena was going to, unfortunately they couldn't be here today, but this is just me mentioning comments that they were going to be working on an assay, and they were going to be taking blood samples from various, patients, TTR patients, so that they could, I guess find something out in the blood or use it to develop it. I have no idea. I'm not a scientist or a doctor, but are any of you familiar with the assay that Prothena was going to be working on? No? Okay. Suzanne says, I was diagnosed with wild type ATTR in October 2019 and began taking Vindamax in October of 2019. I was told that I had severe cardiac amyloidosis. When I went to the Cleveland Clinic in October 2020, my test reports showed that there wasn't any progress in my disease and some improvement. I am an insulin-dependent diabetic and have been on metformin for, you would probably actually know what metformin is, I would think.
Metformin,
Yeah. Recently, I read that the combination of metformin and Vindamax could cause improvement in this disease. Is there any truth to that report?
I'd be curious to hear where that data came from, but we certainly have a medical information office that can get some more information on that specifically. I don't know that has been borne out, and getting back to this large study data point.
Okay, and this is all right. We have some financial questions. I'm going to save those, okay, and because they're specific to individuals, and they really won't have that much service for the entire group, and we want to do what's best for the majority here. So we'll save that, and I'll send them to you separately. Okay. I have cardiac transthyretin wild type amyloidosis, non-hereditary, and have been on tafamidis, a stabilizer, for about 1 year. Oh no, okay, never mind that one. Okay, here's another one. This is from Ernest and another person. I was diagnosed October 2019 with cardiac amyloidosis at the Cleveland Clinic. Okay, I started Vyndaqel October 2019. I would like to participate in the new trials that stop the disease at the front end. I guess they would mean the knockdown drugs, the RNA interference drugs. I feel my body is constantly battling the symptoms of this disease. What's the status of the silencer drug trials, and when do you think these drugs will be available to us? I've been on Vindamax since June 2019. So then we see this a lot with people on Vindamax. They want to keep on the Vindamax or Vyndaqel, but also get on one of the newer drugs, which are in clinical trials now for cardiac. So let's go to our Gustavo and let's go to Akshay and say, when your clinical trials, do they include people that are on Vindamax? Can they be in your clinical trials if they're on Vindamax?
Yes, Muriel. So the CardioTransform trial that is assessing the TTR-like from Ionis Axia in ATTR cardiomyopathy, it's a trial that was decided since the beginning, always like this, allowed the families use anytime during the trial, no questions asked. We never thought that we would be honest to bring to the table a trial that would prevent patients to receive the best available treatment for them, just to be in our trial and see if our drug works. So we understand that this always brings some disruptions and problems for the trial, but you are the second in the market, you have to face what the reality is. And so in our trial, we accept the families anytime. So if you are on tafamidis, you can come to the trial. And if you decide to stop tafamidis, or if physician decides to stop tafamidis for you, no questions asked. If you are not on tafamidis and you get to our trial, CardioTransform, and you decide to start tafamidis or you have access to tafamidis for your payer or any other source, you can start tafamidis at any time during the trial, day 1, 6 months, 12 months, no questions asked. So for the CardioTransform trial from Ionis Akcea, there's no problem at all. You can come on tafamidis and you continue your tafamidis treatment and be part of the trial, of course, if you meet all the eligibility criteria.
Akshay, what about your trials?
Yeah, I obviously echo what Gustavo said, that you have to respect what in the jargon we say standard of care. So if a patient is on tafamidis, one should allow that and study the new drug on top. So our trials basically allow both patients that are not on tafamidis, because these trials are done across many countries, and in some countries there's no access to tafamidis yet for whatever reason. And so there, the patients come in without tafamidis, and if you're in a country where there is tafamidis access and you're on it, then you can come in the trial with tafamidis. So there's provision for both types of patients in our cardiac trials.
That's great to hear. Okay, we got a lot more questions for our physicians, but now we're going